This is part 2 of making my giant Hatsune Miku wig to cosplay one of my favorite Miku figures. Last time you saw how I got inspired by some suspiciously Miku colored pool noodles and created a detachable structure using pool noodle, duct tape, and magnets. But now it's time to glue on the hair, and it was definitely a struggle. I bought a bunch of Miku wigs and started with taking the ponytail off the claw clip and pinning it to my wig head in order to crimp it. I honestly didn't realize how much harder it is to crimp super long hair. It kept getting tangled and it took a lot longer than I expected. Next was cutting and gluing the hair into wefts. I measured the hair to cut each piece into a uniform size, then glued it into flat strips before leaving them out on sheets of plastic wrap to dry. Finally, it was time to put the hair onto the base. I used hot glue to attach the stiff part of the weft onto the base, then used clear glue to attach the rest. I smoothed it down with a toothbrush and then rinsed and repeated. However, the braid part was a lot of complex shapes and the hair went in many directions. It ended up being super difficult to get the hair to look right, but after several sections, I started to get the hang of it. I cut the end of the weft straight, then used heat to bend the end to match the shape of the base, then used hot glue to attach it to the base. Then I trimmed and curled the loose ends of the hair to fit the base right. It took a couple of wefts to cover each small section of the braid. When all the wefts were attached, I went over with a thick layer of glue before brushing it down with a wet toothbrush. Next, I started working on the helmet. I glued some strips of cotton batting down to create the shape of the parting, then covered it in some more blue fabric. Then I did the same method of cutting the ends straight and bending them into a good shape before using hot glue to stick them down. However, I kept the ends loose and thinned them down so they could neatly come to a point at the ponytail base. Afterwards, I smeared glue all over the base and combed the hair over it with my toothbrush to glue everything down. At this point, I knew the wig was getting too heavy. There were 8 super strong magnets in each pigtail, but I felt like it was still too unstable. So I decided to cut the magnets out and went back to the drawing board. This video is getting super long, so I'll have to do a part 3 to show you how I managed to hold together this wig while still making it detachable for travel.